Hello, my name is Anne-Plessis. I'm the program lead for biological sciences, and I'm also a lecturer in plant biology. What I'm going to do in this talk is take you through our course and explain what makes it special. So the main difference between this course and the others in the school is its breadth. Our students learn about all aspects of biology. So that means this course is great for students who don't know yet which aspect of biology they like the most, but they still know that they like biology. They usually figure out what they like by the end of their first year or in the course of their second year, and that means that in third year they are able to tailor the program to their own interests and get a deeper knowledge of those areas during that third year. So biology is an experimental science, and so biologists do not just need to learn theoretical knowledge of biology, but also acquire practical skills. And because some parts of biology are done in the lab, for example, experiments, and others are done in the field, for example, surveys or observations, and these different parts rely on different types of skill. Our students need to learn a very wide range of skills, both in the lab and in the field. So I'm just going to give you an example of how we incorporate all of this, the different types of skills and the theory in all together through this activity that we do when we go on one of our field courses. And this is what students are doing on these pictures. So before we go to this place, we teach the students about the theory of integrated pest management, which is how farmers can limit the use of pesticides by monitoring whether they have too much of a certain pest in their field, and only treat the field once that threshold is met. So after they've learned that, the students then get hands-on experience of integrated pest management by surveying caterpillars in the pasture that is in this picture. They also take some of the caterpillars back to the lab, and they're going to analyze them to study the variability of their resistance to pesticide. And then we relate their results to what we know about how pesticides resistance evolves. So now that I've shown you this example, I'm going to give you an overview of the different areas that biology covers and how we teach that to our students. So one of the things that we start with is the basis of life, cells. And cells are kind of like little factories with different compartments which have specific functions, which is what is studied in cell biology. We explain that to function, these small factories that cells are rely on tiny machines, which are proteins, for example, enzymes, that among other things control the chemical reactions that are necessary for life, and this is something that is studied in biochemistry. We also teach the students about how the plans for these machines are encoded into the DNA and how these instructions are read, also known as molecular biology. And finally, we explain how those instructions are passed on from one generation to another, which is genetics. So now let's see how this applies to a variety of biological organisms, starting with the smallest ones. So that's microorganisms, and in particular bacteria. So students learn about the different types of bacteria, how to tell them apart based, for example, on how they look like when they grow on a plate like this one, or under a microscope. But quite often, appearance alone is not enough to be able to identify different species. So then the students can use some of their knowledge about the metabolism of different bacteria, and in particular, which compounds they need to be able to grow, so which kind of food they need. And so to do that, they will grow the bacteria on different plates containing different types of foods, and depending on whether they can grow or not on these different plates, then that gives them information to be able to determine which species the bacterium might be. Another thing that knowing what compounds the bacteria needs to eat, and also what conditions are better for them to grow, that applies to their ecology, because then we can understand why some bacteria can thrive on certain parts of the planet or in certain organisms. Another group of organisms that we teach to our students about, and which I think is very important, I'm not at all biased by the fact that I'm the one who, one of the lecturers who teach about it, are plants. So students learn how to identify different families of plants based on what their flowers look like, so maybe if there's some kind of symmetry to the flowers, and other characteristics. For example, the mint family has square stems and often aromatic leaves. Students also learn about how plants work. That's what we call physiology, in particular how they can build sugars using carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and energy from the sun. That's photosynthesis. And it's not just very important for the plants, it's also very important for us, because this is where most of our food comes from. Students also learn about how water and nutrients are transported through the plant without the plant having to provide any energy for that transport. We also look at how plants can deal with an often dangerous environment that they can run away from, and that can be dangerous because of extreme temperatures, pathogens, or animals that can eat them. So we see what kind of adaptations or change to physiology can help the plants deal with that. And in third year, students who are interested in plant-related topics can find out about how that knowledge about plants can be useful to improve agriculture or identify useful pharmaceuticals or insecticides, and how plants will be affected by climate change. We also obviously cover animals, for example, how the anatomy of invertebrate differs from vertebrates, how to recognize the different parts of the body of insects, how to use that to recognize different species of insects. But also, we learn about how animals survive using different ways of finding food and avoiding predators, how their bodies work, and how they have evolved. One particularly interesting thing about animals is that they can move in a controlled and purposeful way, and that gives rise to behaviors that are absolutely fascinating to study and understand, especially in an ecological context when animals interact with each other. So this degree is not a biomedical degree, but we always have students who are particularly interested in human biology, and there are optional modules that allows them to learn more about humans. So human biology, that is really interesting because it links well with other aspects of biology that they learn during the course. From genetics, which applies to all living organisms, to microbiology, because it helps understand how microorganisms can infect humans. Animal physiology, because humans are basically animals. Plant natural products, which can be used as drugs to treat our diseases. So that all relates to other things that they've learned during the course. So that was my quick overview of different areas that we teach the students during the course, but how is that all of these different things, are they spread over the third year, the 3 years of the course? So in first year, we teach the students the basics of how cells, remember the little factories, how they work, and the ground principles of the different areas I just described, including the evolution of life and how all these different organisms have come to be. There's a little bit of overlap with A-levels because we get students that have done different A-levels before coming here, and one important aim for us is that to get everyone on the same level for the second year. The highlight of the first year is when we take our students on a 5-day field course to Slapton, which is in Devon, just 30 miles from Plymouth, because when they go there, they get to apply all the knowledge they learned during the lectures and get new practical skills. What makes Slapton a really great field course location is that there's a really high diversity of environments just within a walking distance. There's the sea that you can see here with the shingle ridge, where students look at how plants are adapted to the high salinity of that environment, but also high exposure to wind and sun and people walking on them. There's the Lee, which is a big body of fresh water just meters away from the sea. There's woods, including ancient woodland with some streams. And there are also agricultural fields. We teach students how to identify the different species of freshwater and terrestrial invertebrates, birds and plants that are in the area. We teach them how to survey those organisms and use that information to better understand the local biodiversity and even the quality of the water based on what organisms can be found and in what quantity in the water. So students also learn how to keep good record of their work in field notebooks, which is a very important practical skill. On the last 2 days of the field course, they can use all that new knowledge and skills to research as a team a biological question of their interest. And that is the first time that they get to be independent investigative scientists. In second year, we rely on all those ground principles learned during the first year to delve into more complex areas. In particular, we get into how organisms interact with their environments, so plants in the plant ecophysiology module, and microorganisms in the microbial physiology and biochemistry module. Students also learn more about an aspect of biology you can't observe with your eyes or microscopes, and that's in the molecular biology module. We learn about the information encoded in DNA, how it's read by the cells to generate a fully functioning organism. But also we look at when things go wrong with DNA, how this can lead to genetic diseases or cancer. In second year, students can start specializing towards the area they are more interested in. Those who prefer field or more natural aspects of biology can study the ecology module, while those who prefer lab or human aspects can take a module that is run by the biomedical school, which is focused on human physiology and related diseases. So that's the one called systems physiology, function and dysfunction. There's a second field course, which in that year, so there's the first one in Slapton in first year, and then in September of the second year, we take our students to the Azores for a full week. The Azores, there are a group of small Portuguese volcanic islands in the middle of the Atlantic. And the isolation of these islands makes them very interesting on a biological level, as the few organisms that have reached those islands have evolved independently from the continents for millions of years, forming new species only found there, and these are called endemic species. Unfortunately, humans who have settled in the Azores have brought new species, some of which have become invasive and have outcompeted the local flora and fauna. In particular, there's an endemic habitat of the Azores that's called the Laura Silva forest, which you can see here. It's a little bit more of a bush type environment than like a shrub type vegetation than an actual forest. And that one is especially endangered by invasive plants. And this phenomenon, this competition, is one of the things that we look at. Another special feature of the Azores is their volcanic activity. So we take our students to crater lakes and hot springs where we have a look at the microorganisms that live there. And for example, we look at which bacteria are able to survive in very hot and alkaline water that would be deadly for most other life. And that type of organisms are called extremophiles because they can live in extreme conditions. We also go on a boat trip to observe the birds and marine mammals that are found around the Azores. And in the past 2 years, we've spotted several species of dolphins, and we've even seen some sperm whales. So field courses are fantastic to learn new skills and see how biology works in real life, but they're also amazing to help our students feel part of a big family of biologists. During field courses, they have to work as teams and help each other and look out for each other. And that often means that they make new friends and they strengthen already existing friendships. They also get to know the lecturers better, and we get to know them better. And the students then figure out that we are real people and we're not as scary as we might think when we're in lecture theatre. And so they're not as intimidated by us anymore. And when we come back, then they are much more comfortable asking us questions. And that makes a big difference to their learning experience. So between the second and the third year, our students can go for a placement year. I think Rich Billington gave you more details of that process in his overview talk, so I won't go through that again, but I'll give you some examples of what our students do. So they have a wide variety of choice because, as I said, we have a very broad program, so they can work in other universities on research projects. So this year we had the students go to Spain and another one go to Scotland. They can work with conservation charities. They can work on outreach. They can work in the industry. So for example, next year, one of my students is going to do a full year placement with BASF, and it's a paid placement. Generally, in third year, most of our students know what kind of biology they prefer, so they can specialize in their area of interest. One of the things that they can do to specialize is when they choose their dissertation project. And because we have a wide variety of expertise in the school, they are extremely likely to find a project they are interested in. They can also specialize to our optional modules, which cover the areas of microbial ecology, plant biotechnology, animal nutrition, pharmacology, and global change ecology. We have some core modules. There's ecotoxicology, which all students have to do. And there's one module called Advanced Skills and Concepts that is there for them to get research and professional skills that will be useful for their project. So for example, the analysis of complex data, that can be very helpful for them to know how to do that for their project. But it's also a type of skill. Well, it's actually several skills that are very sought after by employers. So because this program covers such a vast area of science, our lecturers have a large range of research topics, which I think Rich already illustrated for you in his overview talk. That said, because he's so modest, he didn't talk about himself, even though he does some really interesting stuff. He uses biochemistry techniques, which are lab techniques that look at chemical reactions in living organisms, and uses those techniques to understand the ecology of invertebrates, and in particular how their immune system works. And that's a really cool mix of lab and field aspects. And students really tend to like his projects because they are mixing both sides of biology. And so all the lecturers who teach on this course, we don't just work on different topics in terms of research, we also do research in different ways, and that gives us, I think, a very different perspective on biology. So for example, Mike, who's an evolutionary biologist, he asks why things are the way they are, how they came to evolve to be this way. Chiara and myself, because we are physiologists, our questions are more based on how do organisms work. George, who uses a lot of microscopy for his research, he will ask questions more related to what does this look like. And Rich, because he's not just a biochemist, he's also a very good taxonomist, he will ask questions based around what is this species. And so that means that we also help our students get a wide variety of perspectives about how you can ask questions about biology. With the breadth of knowledge and skills that our students acquire during their course, they get all sorts of jobs. They may become science teachers, many of them do. Some go on to further studies to become researchers in academia or in the industry. They can be lab technicians, they can do data analysis, or they can do outreach. And these are just a few examples of the many types of jobs that our students get. So just to conclude, there are two things that I want to highlight that makes this course different from many other biology courses in the country. First, I think our course is very well balanced between lab and field biology. That kind of depends on which modules our students choose, but generally they do about half field experience and half lab practicals. And the other one is that our university has a real culture of support for our students. At the school level, we have personal and senior tutors, and at the university level, we have many support services for disability, learning, well-being, and career. And this makes me really proud to work here because we genuinely care about our students. So if you have questions, make sure to register for our live Q&A sessions, and maybe I will get to talk to you there.